So that's why that is on there. Does anybody have any strong thoughts on any of those dates, or would you rather try to move it to June?
The negotiations team has a scheduled meeting the 22nd with the teachers.
With our teachers?
Yeah.
I just got called to jury duty on the 22nd. I don't know if I'm going to get picked, but the trial is the 20th, starts the 20th.
Okay.
I'm not around on the 8th, neither am I.
Sorry.
That's all right.
No, it's 2 days before.
So May 8th is a board meeting.
It is?
Yeah.
Yes, that was the one reason we had thought the 8th, that we could have a light agenda, and then
Oh, maybe, okay.
the 22nd is not, that's the fourth Wednesday. But if we looked at June, the board meeting would be the 12th. Would everyone be around on the 12th?
Are you around the
Kim, are you shaking your head no over there?
I'm laughing.
Oh.
So you're looking at June 12th?
Yeah, I'm wondering. I really feel strongly that
You need to have everyone.
we need to have everyone, I mean, barring, family crisis or emergency that pops up. I'm promising I'm not having any more surgery. Would.
Is there another date that we might throw out in the event that doesn't work, or? But right now, everybody could make June 12th.
Right. Does Wednesdays work best? I mean, if we were to do a meeting like this, so if they couldn't come on our board meeting night in June, if we kept it on a Wednesday, would that work for people? Knowing that Wednesdays are just, I mean, I know like Monday is, I've got Monday meetings, so I just stay away from Mondays.
Yeah, that's another school board meeting.
On Monday. I mean, I could suggest the 19th to the 26th if the 12th for some reason doesn't work, if that meets with the pleasure of the board.
I will say the 26th, I will be in Linden with FFA kids, so I won't be around.
Oh, me and June, around the 19th?
Give them 2 days in case.
Yeah, does that work? If we say the 12th, and then can you all kind of put in your calendars possibly the 19th? So we'll shoot for the 12th.
12th is best.
Yep.
So I will go back with that.
Was that? The 12th is or the 19th or the 12th? I don't know. Lorraine, do you know when the high school graduation is?
June 8th.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's a Saturday, right?
Yeah.
And it's, well, Virginia's would be the following one, so that would be the 12th, 14th, I believe.
I think it's Saturday.
No, Virginia's is a Friday night. Mount Aid and Middlebury have the same date, same time. I found that out last year. But Virginia's does the following Friday for some.
So we will give this date June 12th,
I will fire back an email and see if that date is.
and the 19th is a backup. So-so.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So moving on, informational agenda, facilities report.
We did not have a formal meeting,
Okay.
correct? John Curl will be here momentarily,
Oh, okay.
just in case we had questions on the 5-year plan. We were gauging, what time he should come, and I said, well, why don't you try 5:30 since we're on the agenda for 5:40, so he should be here in just a
Okay.
couple minutes.
Well, we could continue on.
There was no budget and policy
No, there wasn't.
meeting in March.
Right.
That was a conflict with another meeting, I think, at the same time. And we just touched base very briefly.
And
Community engagement did meet. Yeah, we had minutes in the packet. So you want to-
so would someone like to present the engagement committee meeting?
Sure.
Right.
I think the outreach opportunities probably, for most of the work was done that day. The vision statement and so on, Chris was gracious enough to bring what they did at River Gens. And that's kind of a starting point, but, again, it's still a discussion phase, where, the timeline and all those pieces. So we definitely want serious input, like they did, and there's a process, what, it took a year, I think we were talking about. Anyway, and then Dana updated on the Carmen Station Cafe, discussion about holding a career fair. No definite plans set or anything, but just that conversation. We need to take a look at the handbook, possibly update things there, website, course descriptions, all those pieces. We also talked about sending a weekly paragraph to Sunday schools, because they do put out a newsletter. And that's something that I know was done in the past at Mount Abe, and it would be kind of a nice way for us to continue that process where parents are checking in on that newsletter along with students. And then the conversation led to maybe possibly doing the same thing with the elementary schools. And focus on, a piece of the, maybe a highlight of one particular program, whatever. We didn't really put any definite label on what that would look like. And then the discussion engaging the alumni, which most instructors here have quite a bit of contact with, and it's a pretty good list of who's and what they're doing in each different program. What else? We talked about some other things like taking a serious tour of the building, which a lot of people haven't seen. Some came to open house out some of it, but that was another piece that we may put on the agenda in future meeting. Anything else, Christine?
So along those lines, we were thinking about doing a building tour in May. Is that what we had discussed at that meeting? So that we could come here. We might even start a little early, do a tour, and then begin our meeting at 5 o'clock. So if that is your pleasure, we can set that up for next.
You're asking the board to come, is that what you're saying?
Right, because that's one of the things that the committee discussed, just getting a tour of our facility out here so that people would be familiar. I know that Sean, as a new member, came and set up a time, and I think we took about 20 minutes to walk through programs, and you made a comment that you were amazed at what you had your facilities.
Yeah.
In case you haven't done a tour recently or at all, we'd be happy to do that next time. We started at 4:45 and then 4:30 so that people would have enough time. So just looking for your sense of the board, and we can plug that in and just remind you as we get closer to that time, if that's what you want to do.
What was that date?
Well, it looks like there's a discrepancy. May 8th is a Wednesday, and then it says May 7th at the bottom of this meeting. It's a Wednesday. So,
You sent out.
Friday, May 10th, May 10th is a Friday, because
Right.
May 3rd is a Friday, so the
It's Tuesday. It's
Tuesday.
Tuesday, May 7th. That's the
that's what I was
invitation.
wondering.
community engagement meeting is Tuesday, May 7th.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, but you probably typed in on Wednesday, so it's Tuesday.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure where.
So at the bottom here.
Right at the bottom of it.
Oh, did I update that myself?
I don't know. I don't know. I could try to blame you, but it's probably me.
It is Tuesday,
Tuesday, I'm getting the day version.
Tuesday, May 7th. The reason is I have an invitation that I'll talk about in just a minute for all board members to come. That's during our NEASC visit on the previous week. So that's May 1st. And so we needed to move the community engagement meeting to actually engage in the community on, I knew that we were going to be proposing an evening dinner for the NEASC visiting team. So that's why we moved it to the following Tuesday.
So all right, so if the board would like to attend the community engagement committee meeting, it's Tuesday, May 7th, and they're willing to do a tour of just this campus, correct? You're not going to try to do both campuses?
No, but I also want to clarify with the members of the community engagement meeting was that it was before the board meeting, not at the community engagement committee meeting, that you were looking at having a tour,
Correct.
so that we wouldn't have to bring people out for two
Right.
meetings back to back.
Okay, so community engagement meeting is Tuesday, May 7th,
Correct.
but the tour of the facilities is
Prior
Wednesday,
to the
May
board
8th,
meeting.
before the board meeting.
So if that will work for you, and we can start, you can say, gather it at 4:30, and then we'd have sufficient time to walk around the building and get back and be ready for the
Meeting.
meeting. At,
Yeah, the board meeting is on the 8th,
the
right?
board meeting is on the 8th. But
Yes.
that was also when we were looking to hold the tour.
So how many people would like to take up the walking tour of the building before our meeting on the 8th?
No, no.
Well,
Okay.
Yes, if you're not around.
He doesn't care.
Well, has everyone seen
I
your
don't.
campus? I mean, there's the other question.
I'd like a tour.
You'd like a tour, Griffin?
So what we can do is, we can certainly do a tour at the community engagement committee meeting. If you want to show up, that's fine. If you'd like a tour outside of the board meeting time, feel free to call me or John, and we can certainly take you on a tour of the facility.
Where are the community engagement meetings held? Here?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I just didn't know.
Game stuff.
If anyone is interested in attending.
And that is Tuesday.
May 7th.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Okay, so. Now we're going to go back to facilities. And John, thank you for joining us.
Sure.
You're the man of the hour in here.
I don't know that.
Everybody should have a copy of the 5-year project plan. If you don't, I have additional copies here that you may have.
I'll get around and get one. Would you like me to? Okay, that sounds great, thank you. You want one too, Gretchen?
John wants to.
Oh,
okay.
Thank you.
So I think just a brief overview to bring us back together on this. The last 2 meetings, we've talked about this being a work in progress, putting together the projects that will need to be done in the next 5 or so years and prioritizing those and trying to determine how we would fund these projects. It became pretty clear that we wouldn't be able to accomplish the work with our existing funding sources, so on the operating budget or even on the BERF. And that's where you'll see a number of them list bonds, and the idea is to pull those projects together and request a bond. You can see the types of things that will need to be addressed.
So there's a lot of infrastructure that has been changed over the years, a new roof, new heating system, new windows. One thing that has never been addressed here has been the air handling system, which are original equipment from 1972 when the building opened. And so that has been around facilities for many, many years, and we've never really figured out a good way to be able to take care of all those issues with those at once. They've been well maintained, but they are 50 years old, so, you know, that's one thing that's on there. The electrical panels, the majority of them are Federal Pacifics, which are an old breaker that are no longer reliable to trip. So that's why those are on there, and that includes the switch gear. And the fire panel was made a suggestion from Carrie Marshall that you might want to take a look at this and replacing this at some time. So that's how a lot of these items have gotten on here, either from recommendations from contractors that I deal with, or service techs, and then some just need to be taken care of from age.
And all of these, I think, have been presented to the Facilities Committee over the last 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
Joan, where's the 10,000 gallon tank?
It's just south of the boiler room. It's about within 80 feet of the boiler room.
So it's not
in-ground tank.
So you have a cost of $25,000, is that, are we sure it hasn't leaked or leached?
We're sure that it hasn't leaked, yes. It is that was installed in 1991 when the heating system was replaced, and it was converted from electric to oil. And it's a double wall tank, and I had it checked 2 years ago. And it hasn't been leaking. We have monitored it. Right now, we've used it, we're allowed to keep it in the ground as long as we are using it as a backup. But the moment we get away from that, then we have a year to get it removed.
And currently it is being used as backup.
Currently, it is being used as backup. The way a lot of these things might play out is to be able to handle them with a bond. You know, if we are going to remove that tank, we're not going to want to pave ahead of that. We want to get that out of there and then pave it over. So take things in like that into consideration.
Is there any talk about the high school and the work that they need to do with paving also?
I reached out to Champlain Valley Equipment, or not equipment, but construction, and they, Damon asked me to get figures on the back out here. I certainly would coordinate with Bruce if we're gonna do that kind of a project.
I have a question for you. So our district just did a big energy performance contract, and we just did a bunch of work in our district under those auspices. And
Yes.
I was just wondering if any of this work would fall under that category where you could replace all the
That's,
lighting and all that, you know?
yes, that's the idea.
Okay, so that's what you're thinking.
Yes.
So that's something Missy will bring up in just a minute.
Okay.
We were talking about future work
Yeah.
and with the pleasure of the board is to give some direction to the Facilities Committee in terms of the work that we know needs to be done.
Great. I mean, we've saved $80,000 in electricity bills just since then. Work has been
I spoke with Ken, and
Did you?
actually,
Yeah.
yes, and that's how I started headed in that direction.
Yeah, yeah,
It-
been great.
Yeah.
But to Mark's question to John, we are coordinating closely with ACSD in terms of what's our responsibility and what's their responsibility. But certain things that we're responsible for taking care of may involve reaching out to them for their component. For example, driveway, I think, for the most part, except for certain designated areas, is the maintenance of ACSD of the facility here. And so we are coordinating with them on those tasks. But I did ask John for a specific figure in terms of what it would cost to do that if we needed to do it ourselves.
So the paving parking lot, main campus, Is that this parking lot, or is that the one?
It's
off
mostly
behind?
behind the building, because this has been done within the last couple of years.
Other than the big gully that runs down through it.
There's a section of our
They did this section out here where the staff park.
parking, yeah.
The other section was done, I'm gonna say like probably like 8 years ago out there.
In front of ACSD.
It's been a long time since.
Right, the back
park
is
It has been patched,
pretty
and
rough.
I believe that Bruce was responsible for having that
Yeah.
taken care of. It was because the patchwork needed to be done on a section that was just full of potholes and was creating a dangerous situation. So that was addressed in this year, in the school year.
Yeah.
But that's only a small fragment of what would need to be done for that area to be brought up to fire building.
So what exactly are you, so would you just be repaving what's paved back there, or would you
No.
continue further around or down the hill, or?
Well, so it would, what was quoted in this 150,000 was what is paid currently.
Okay,
So from this corner of the
Yeah.
building, all the way around back to where our storage building is, where the bus barn is.
okay.
Right, and that basically covers the entire footprint of the periphery of our building.
Right.
So are you guys having to pay attention to the new stormwater regulations and fall under, because is there a retention pond here?
There aren't retention ponds here.
So, agreed.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of new regulations, like we're getting required, and all the schools are gonna be required to deal with the stormwater retention coming up, so.
We do have a retention pond at,
At North Campus, we have,
Not here.
and that gets inspected annually from Krebs and Lansing.
So that's coming down the pike really soon, because we just had a meeting about our issue in our district. It could factor into the 150,000.
Yeah,
For
and,
sure.
and some of these figures, we sat in a facilities committee and we, based on some kind of educated guesses, we chose them. So they are hard and fast. They would need to be, looked into much more closely to get accurate figures.
So then it says bond. We haven't had a conversation as a board regarding a bond. So are you planning on talking about that tonight or another time? And how much would you think we would need to bond for?
well, so on here, I've done subtotals for each of the areas. And as you can see, there's only a small amount that is actually covered in the operating budget in terms of whether it's the general fund or whether something can be covered through the BRF. And we have those taken care of. These are major investments. And you can see that the bottom line there is $870,000. So depending on whether you keep the $150,000 for paving or not, we would also want to add some kind of a contingency in, and there might be other things that would be identified if we were to do a full scale assessment of the facility upgrades. So we're looking at potentially $1 million to even $1.5 million, depending on what turns out. And the question that we were going to look at this evening was something that Christina mentioned, and Missy and I were talking about it earlier. If the board wanted more information on the two ways that we could go about doing the prospective work, a traditional request for proposal process, which would require us to do an analysis of our entire system, which we would pay for up front, or possibly doing a performance contract where we could have somebody come in do an assessment and then provide us the quote for what that would cost as a bond item. And I think, did you do a bond, Christina?
We did,
Right.
yeah.
So that's a suggestion. It's not that we're saying that we need to do a bond, but to get more information to the board around the two options that we would have, we'd like to know what your pleasure is. And once again, well, that could be something that we do at a May meeting and have someone come in and present. It may even be someone like Ken, who has actually been through that process and is the facilities director up at Freegan's.
Yeah, I'm on the facilities committee there, so I was part of the process, the energy audit, RFP, and all that.
But I think he would be able to do a good job without us getting involved with any particular provider.
Yeah,
So it would be, you would get the perspective of someone who has experience with those two processes, and then we could take direction from there about which process that we would like to pursue.
And I would add, if we're pursuing, that's why we're here to talk about what we've identified for projects, the cost, and in strategizing on how to pay, it would seem that bond would be the most logical approach. And so we're here to say, introduce that to the board and get some direction on how do we want to continue to move this forward.
is there anything on this list that's like an emergency, or it's getting ready to break or blow up? Because that's kind of what we were facing with this, our steam system was just any second it was going. Like how urgent are, do these things need?
Well, so, I mean, it really has been deferred maintenance. I mean, some of it has.
Yeah, so it
Just
should
been on
happen
the
like
list.
10 years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't think there's anything that's gonna explode and,
Good.
For you guys?
yeah.
Switchgear is the only one in,
What's that?
switchgear is the only one
Next year.
for next year.
Yeah. Right. I mean, and that's, the way it was kind of, when we started this list, we were really thinking about bond. We're just putting in things that, well, maybe we could handle this much or this much. But when you put it all together, so the switch gear and the majority of the electric panels in the building are all Federal Pacific. And which, we don't want something to not trip when it should. And so that could be a real liability. So the switch gear, the last time I turned it off, it's always a little bit, it's very seldom that has to be done, but it wasn't real sure that it was gonna come back on when I flipped the switch back on. It's a little scary switching that switch back and forth.
So, can I ask a dumb question?
Sure.
What's the
Phil
switch?
here would say, so
There's
it's,
no dumb
there's
question.
no such thing as a dumb question. The switch gear is the
Thank you.
main, it's the main breaker that energizes all the other panels.
Oh, okay,
So it's the major disconnect for the power.
all right, okay.
That was a good question.
To me, that would be I consider it the main breaker into my house.
Right.
Okay,
Yes,
all right.
except this one is ginormous.
Okay.
So John, just for the benefit of the board, we had identified, that was the earliest thing that we needed to look at upgrading. It's not in an immediate danger of failing,
Right,
correct?
that's correct.
And we wanted to be proactive and preventative in addressing that because of the age of the equipment and the lack of compatible parts at this point in time, correct?
Yeah.
But it probably could be nursed along for another year.
Yes, certainly. It's I've probably turned it off half a dozen times since I've been here. That's 25 years. So it's just very rare that I have to do that, but I'd like it to come back on. So, no, every, there's nothing that's really
Now,
pressing.
John, I have an image of you with big rubber gloves and rubber
When we just sold my parents' house.
Oh, you did sell it.
Yeah, upstairs in the attic, well, second floor, so I didn't really have an eye. We still had a knife switch up there that was live. We used to turn that on and off as kids, there's no problem, no, couldn't be rubber girls. So anyways, no, there's nothing here that is gonna just flat out break down. You know, in the
Could you
near-
talk about the roof membrane in North Campus? That's something new that I haven't seen.
So I just put, so again, and I qualified that by pending a roof evaluation. When it's a membrane roof on that building and it is, they say it has a 15-year life. So that
How old
was,
is it?
it was built in 2005.
Okay.
So we're fast approaching that 15-year mark. And so I haven't had it evaluated, but, you know, that would be a big ticket item if we had to do that work.
No leaking issues, so, at this point.
No, no leaking issues, no. I don't want it.
Yeah.
It's an
Just trying to be proactive about it.
Is it EPDM?
Yeah.
That's time. It's in the sun.
Yeah.
I mean, could we split the difference and aim for a bond in 22, 23? Is that what
Oh,
you're trying to sort of
we're
figure
not,
out when to do it, or?
We don't have a, I don't think the
Overview.
facilities committee was making a recommendation for doing a bond now. But we, in order, if this work is work that needs to be done, we're looking at providing information and education to the board about when they would want to do that after they are positioned to feel comfortable about the process that they would use. And since there are there are two alternate approaches to doing the work, we thought that we would start by getting the board's consensus about how they would like to proceed. And then, yes, the bond could be offered for 2021 or 2022. It's not an immediate need to do it for next year. As you can see, many of those big ticket items have a 22 or 23 timeline that has been attached to them.
So, having gone through the Mount Abe bond, is that 3 times? Failure, every time. I would suggest that we, if we do decide to do a bond, that we get working on that, because, boy, we have town meeting next March, which would be a good time to vote for it. If you do a bond for a significant amount of money, you can put, as long as the state agrees, you put that in a capital building projects fund or whatever, and it gets removed from the calculation for the equalized pupil tuition rate. So we could have the money to start working on all of these things. Plus, my feeling is once you get a person in to do the actual assessment, this list is going to grow. So we don't have a whole lot of, we don't have time to wait for 2021, 2022, or 2023 to vote on, have the electorate vote on something like this. And I would hope, you know, this maybe 1.5 million, probably will get closer to 2 once the actual assessment happens. That might be a small enough number for a bond vote to pass and not be a big deal.
The other thing that the board should know is that there is a bond. The bond that was set for North Campus is due to sunset in the next 4 or 5 years. So that would take which was a significantly larger cost than what we're looking at for these improvements. So that would be coming off of the books in terms of both interest and principal. So that another bond could replace that, and there is some restructuring that Gibson has been looking into that would allow us to perhaps just continue with a certain level of payments in order to ease that transition. So there are several things that could be done.
I was just gonna say, it might also not be a bad idea to check with all of these sending schools as well as the sending towns, just to see if anybody is planning on
Doing a bond also.
initiating bonds in the next 2 or 3 years, just so we are not all.
We won't be next year. We haven't even started working, so there's no way we can do anything for this coming March.
Taxpayers aren't being hit by.
Multiple bonds.
Yeah, that's the Northwest won't be doing anything anytime soon. I will say that, you know, selling an energy efficient project to the public is, you know, very appealing to the taxpayers because it's about saving money.
Well, and so when I talked with Ken about the lighting changes,
It's phenomenal.
those are immediate savings. And, you know, so I actually had a salesman from Green Mountain Electric Supply walking through the building today, on the North Campus, to look at maybe changing those lighting, even though that it was built in 2005. The LEDs have come a long way in a short amount of time, really, and the savings are there right away. So I could see, certainly, like you said, I could see that coming on the list here. And, you know, I really am for anything that we can do to, you know, help the energy efficiency of this building.
And I think that, you know, the second floor access, we talked about that at one of the meetings, and, you know, if we're going to pursue that, we really need to know the cost benefits too. You know, who's going to be using the space, how much can we rent it out and such, so that we just aren't saying we need an elevator there and then never use it, and then you have to have some strong figures behind you if you want to talk about an elevator there. So I think we've got a lot of work cut out for us in the next several months. I know our neighbors across the street use school zooms, but I don't know how much they were charged for that report. But I do know that the numbers that were in that report are not quite as accurate as one would hope. So that I take it and multiply it by a certain factor. I think that's a very big number. So I don't, you know, if there's someone else you want to use, or.
I mean, EEI was great, and we could put in our RFP for an energy performance contract.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's, the question is, what road do we want to go
I
down?
would recommend that, personally. I have a personal experience with it, but.
So if you use EEI, do they
Well,
only?
not, I mean, you put out a.
Right, but do
RFP.
they only look at like the lights and the heating and such, or
No.
do they look at
They
everything?
did a comprehensive
Yeah.
evaluation.
They did a big,
do the same
yeah,
thing here.
the big audit process.
Yeah.
And they come back and they give you all the facts and figures and the contingency and, yeah.
But the approach is whether you would want to go that route with a performance contract, or whether you go a regular RFP for evaluating the system, and then doing subsequent request for proposals for the work, for the bids. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely two different approaches. And they did give like a three option.
level 1, level 2, level 3.
Yeah.
But we would have to send out an RFQ or RFP for that performance type of contract. And then other companies could bid on that as well.
Exactly, yeah. I think you're required by law to get at least
You
three.
have to get at least 3, anything over 15,000.
Yeah, or at least solicit, you might not get it.
You have to ask for a waiver,
Yeah.
we've had to do that on a couple of occasions, if people don't. So a couple of times we've only had to, and we have to write to the state or email them, and they'll grant us a waiver for whatever that is. And we can take that to the board for approval and so on.
If you go the other route, then do you have to, are you responsible for getting all the subcontractors, or like you hire one over, or?
I
two
think that I would
companies?
hire a GC and,
Yeah.
But you
And
would
so you have a
first,
clerk of the works and all that stuff,
Yeah.
right?
We would first have to do the evaluation
for each system.
for each system. And we're finding out that that could be time consuming and costly.
Yeah, that's what I would think too, because,
So I think our goal was to get direction from the board. Do
Yes.
you need more information, or would you like us to begin on the path of the energy plan?
Well, what are people thinking? Mark, you've been really quiet down there.
Don't complain.
Wow, just because the camera showed up, she's really really
She had an extension question, okay.
So, you know, you're talking about energy performance, but that's not really on here. Unless you're including that in the electrical panels and switchgear, but that's not.
there is some there because the original heating system in this building was all electric. And so there are pretty substantial transformer losses because they're oversized for what the building actually needs now. And that, on this list, you're right, Mark, there aren't a lot of energy efficient things in there, but I think with that audit, that there would be a lot more that showed up. You know, air handlers that have the variable speed drives on them that ramp down or ramp up based on need. There are some pretty substantial savings there.
So, I mean, and having gone through bonds and different projects before too, there's preventative maintenance, there's, emergency stuff, which we haven't hit any of that yet. And I think part of what ran my around is the conflicting information or perspective of what people see as what really needed to be done versus what might be nice to be done. And I think that has to be really clear when you go out with a bond. And if I'm understanding correctly, when you do this energy audit, that's just one piece of this whole plan that we're being presented with. And so, in order for the facilities committee to do its due diligence, you're looking for direction from us to go out with an RFP under one of two different plans, to get the energy audit and more specific numbers on a lot of this. Like I think of the paving, and that thing, that could, or that might get pulled out at the end.
You could, I mean, you said they presented you with 3 options, right?
correct, yeah.
Okay,
So
so they give you an A to Z, and then we choose
Yes.
whatever tier level we want.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like, North Campus, I'm not familiar with the specific route that you mentioned, but, how far down the road do you get with patching something like that for 10 years?
Yeah, they look at all that stuff.
They look at all that, okay. So it sounds to me like, if you're looking for direction, it sounds like that makes the most sense to go into, rather than us picking and choosing where we might want to hire somebody or get an RFP from.
And I would think that so the audit is just good information. So it really gives you a good breakdown of what you have and what you don't have, and those highest priority needs.
And it sounds like it'll give us a more finite 5-year, 10-year plan as well.
Sure. I mean, if there were some things that they said, well, no, that really doesn't seem to be an issue, put it out a little further.
The guy been quiet, the guy down the right hand, and the kid
John, I think, assessment needs to be done. This is too early. Do the assessment, then come back, because, yeah, we could double this list in about 5 minutes. I know you could. This is the big stuff, but
That's correct.
have the assessment done, look at it. We know the air handlers, I mean, we talked to the air handlers for the last 46 years. I mean, that's, they're as old as I am, and it's time to, and the efficiency would be there. But until the assessment's done, then we can make more, and then we can really zero in, because you have to explain to the taxpayers what you're doing and why.
Sure.
Because if you say to someone, air handlers are 46 years old, they could go, and there's much more efficient ways to run it now, and it'll
Right.
save money, like you're saying.
Yeah.
But, and then the paving, they could, one more bad winter, and it's, terrible then, show it or whatever, but the assessment needs to be done.
Yeah.
And I think that's the next.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great, I mean, I don't see anything that's out of the ordinary here for big ticket items to do. you know.
So I think what I'm hearing from facilities is that they would like someone on the board to make a motion giving them direction. So a motion to go out and find someone, or put out to 3 people or 4 people that they want to have some work done, and have somebody come through the buildings and do an estimate of what's here and what needs to be done. Or the board would rather just have them piecemeal it. I personally would rather have one big audit and find out what everything is, and then work from there. That would be my thought. But someone want to make the motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Okay, motion is on the table, it's been moved and seconded to allow the facilities group to go out and do an RFP for whole system audit, is that what I want to call it?
Develop an RFP for building assessments.
Okay.
Yeah, which would include efficiency upgrade and building assessment, because it's not so much the efficiency upgrade if the roof is, unless we're doing more insulation, then it would, you'd get more out of it, but.
You decide to put a solar panel up there.
Correct, and then it's a structural analysis, so it just kind of, it's always great if the building can.
So Linda, can you reread that?
It sounded good. I just have authorized facilities to put out an RFP for building assessment.
Okay.
And
And energy efficiency. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Finance, facilities, you guys will get some work.
I'm going on vacation.
So just to be clear, for summarizing purposes, the board isn't looking for anybody to present on different types of methods that we could do for generating an RFP. So we're free to do the whole system approach, like Christina mentioned, with respect to what Bridget's did.
Yes, that was what we'd asked for.
Okay.
And I'm sure that Ken Sullivan would come talk to the board if you guys all wanted to hear about the project more in depth from his perspective at some point.
Now, the request for proposal, the facilities committee has authority to approve and spend up to $15,000. I don't know what this process would take. But in order to put that RFP out, it may have to come back to the full board. anyway.
Right.
And
So at least start the process.
we'll have the language down at the board meeting.
Yeah. Are you good? Okay.
Hey, I gotta go play pickleball.
The important things in life.
No, don't
Budget.
get crutches.
Won't make it very far.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. What's that?
So budget and policy, we said that they did not meet.
Correct.
So then I believe we would be on to the superintendent's report. And we are well behind time.
Yes. So you have a very detailed report. There are several items. Some of them I'll let you read on your own. In terms of ID, I'll start there. Several things are going on that we've already done. We've done some faculty work at faculty PLC meeting. We've also sent 2 professional staff to training on additional awareness. It's part of the grant that we have jointly with ACSD. And the third component of that is I'll be attending a training for building leaders and educational administrators for IB implementation in June.
Nice application.
Could be. Come back the day before the board meeting. See how that works? From what I understand, the trainings are very full-day trainings. They start early in the morning and go until after dinner. So it's a very busy schedule. Have some details on the evacuation drill that we did on Friday. Kelly mentioned that. You can read that. But overall, it was very positive. We got some feedback from the staff, and we got feedback from the students, all of which I'd say, Kelly, in reviewing that, what you presented, was that yesterday, this morning? No, yesterday morning. Very, very positive information in terms of how it helped contribute to knowing what to do if a urgent situation should arise. And overwhelmingly, very positive. We got positive feedback from Midway PD that were here and observing, said that even though there was no urgent departure, that it was controlled and we were efficient in moving off campus. And the times were, I think, about just under 15 minutes, just over 15 minutes to actually get to the farthest location. Total time, 30 minutes and some seconds, I guess, from what Kelly shared with me. So that was very good. We have a NEASC visit coming up, 10-year accreditation at the end of April. That's April 29th through May 2nd. And I do have an announcement that on May 1st, Wednesday, from 5 to 7, we'll be hosting in the Glass Onion a closing reception for the NEASC visiting team. All members of our board are cordially invited to attend. So please sign up using the sheet. I'll pass that along to indicate if you'll be able to attend and any dietary considerations that you would have for Chef Woody. So that is one of the reasons why we're postponing the community engagement committee, because that would be the meeting date till the 7th, Tuesday the 7th. But I'm going to send this around and would ask you to think about whether you can make that, and would love to have you. So, what else do I want? Proficiency-based learning. We've been doing a lot with proficiency-based learning in the last month, including a all-day conference up at the Killington Grand Hotel with 2 of the most prominent leaders in proficiency-based education in the state. And one of those, Andrew, what's Andrew's name? Jones, has done some work with the Career Center 3 or 4 years ago. So anyway, it was good to meet with them, get some training, and there were 6 of us that attended, including Kelly, Wendy Pratt, and then 3 of our instructors. And then on the 29th, we did some follow-up PD aligning assessments with grading scales, and the proficiencies in terms of learning targets. So thought that went very, very well, and you can see the report for the type of expectations from them. And then everybody linked their learning to that in a survey after that PD day. We have an advisory update, and you should have a copy in your packet of all of the advisory teams and who they represented. That's for you to look at as part of this report. And we think that it's really important for us to stay connected to our community, and I think that this report shows that there are many partners in the community who are very active. Based on the spring applications, we had 401 last week when we were gathering that information. It was very great. That compares very favorably, about 15% higher than what we had for last year. So we're excited. We also were the recipients of the Flexible Pathways Grant, an extension of the Flexible Pathways Grant that we were coordinating with ACSD on, and that's for $15,000, and that will help us with curriculum development, planning, training, and coordination of work, inviting some of our partner schools to join us, particularly school counselors, so that we can move our IED forward. Budget projections, you have Gibson's report, but I also did my own analysis, very comparable figures, $2,309,965. That was April. By comparison, we're up $129,000 from last year at approximately the same time. I didn't have 2 exact points to compare, so the difference could easily be related to some of our capital purchases that happened this year that we didn't have last year. It could also be the expense on our HRA side. This year we have almost a full year now of HRA expenses, where last year we only had 2 months. So overall, as Gibson put in the financial overview, we think we're right on track for year-end projections and coming in within budget. Perkins update, I'm just going to say really quickly that Perkins is changing, so there is no action to be taken at this point in time. The new guidelines will be coming out for another week or so, by the end of the month, in terms of how we're going to be applying Perkins this year. I will keep you posted if there's further action that needs to be taken in terms of adopting the Perkins budget. I will let you know when I know. And there's a picture at the end and a little write-up about the Steam Girls and their work with us, but the fact that they were able to, I popped in one day that they were able to connect their work to art and Leonardo da Vinci, I was really impressed with that partnership we have with Missouri College and area elementary schools. Finally, last but not least, we have on page 5 an AOE CTE pilot project to address funding and governance challenges. Back in December, AOE put out a request for proposals to look at different ways that CTE centers could partner with their sending districts and try to either reduce or re-examine funding and how that would provide for greater equity and in access, as well as any governance changes that might be possible. So with Jay Ramsey's help and guidance and solicitation, I'll be putting together a proposal that would address 2 of these. The 2 areas that I have identified is one, instead of over a 2-year period, look at how instead of our assessments being based on FTE alone, have it based on the total cost to operate and then have it assessed out by the percentage of students that each of our secondary schools has in grades 9 through 12. So they would, because our programs are directed by AOE as well as Department of Labor, as well as data on workforce development, what we're trying to do. So to try to do it by every kid that we have is not necessarily, I don't think, the most appropriate way to look at that. So I'm looking at a proposal that would just say, we'll do an assessment on proportionality. I did presentations both last year and this year where I broke out the pie and showed the boards in our sending towns that our costs aren't going to change. Our per pupil cost will drop if that's what we're really looking at, based on the number of students, and we still have capacity in some of our programs to take students, so we could fill those more appropriately, and that would actually help industry as well as higher ed in terms of number of students who will be pursuing those pathways. The second area is one of governance, and I am looking at proposing that since we are a school district with all of the authority and responsibilities of any other school district in the state, that we look at possibly offering a career and technical diploma, which doesn't exist in the state of Vermont, but it exists in other states. So I would propose that we spend 2 years looking at that and offering with our partner schools to examine what types of criteria they would need to have their technical training in place along with the academics that would need to support that. The rationale behind that is that it could potentially reduce barriers for students who are trying to do career and technical education, but find that there are some requirements at the local level that present some challenges. So what we would do, hopefully, is over this time period, look at what those criteria could be, and that we'd have a standardized set of criteria for anybody who wanted a career and technical diploma. Likewise, we could add onto diplomas a career and technical ed concentration, so that in addition to having a regular high school diploma, there could be a notification on there that there's a concentration in career and technical. We think that that would benefit the students for applications to other pursuits after high school. It would also benefit the communities and could potentially benefit our workforce development process and business partners in the community by having those credentials identified for them. I think that's it. That was
Any
a lot, but
questions for Dana, or?
please do feel free. I mean, it's 6 pages long. It's probably the longest board report I've written in my career, but it's full of good
I'm
stuff.
sure there's more to come. Yeah, thank you for the advisory list. It's really nice to see students on some of those groups.
Question on the advisory. Are we on to the advisory?
No, that was as part of his board
Oh,
report,
okay.
but you,
Just, it would be nice to see how often they meet. There's statutory regulations for that, and, on that form.
Everybody had completed a fall advisory meeting, fall, say, up until December, and they're now in the second round of
Everybody's in compliance.
Yep, last year everybody was in compliance, and this year so far, halfway through the year, everybody's.
Great.
any other questions or observations?
I think on we did do printings, and on this one, it may show that there's some missing, they aren't missing. It's now dropped into your folder. Len, I think yours were missing from,
No, that's on here.
oh, it is.
Oh, that is the-
Never mind, forget what I said,
Right.
depending on what version you looked at. I do want to say one thing. By using the Google Drive, we can update all of those materials for you in real time, and so you'd always have the most up to date. You wouldn't have to rely on paper copies. So if something does change, it can be placed in that Google folder, and you would have direct access to that anytime. If you just use your PAHCC account, you just need to be able to log in. If you're logged in, it will take you there automatically from the link that I provided. So, that works.
Dana, is there any formal interaction with the advisory group? I mean, is there system and a process whereby the educators meet with the,
They have meetings twice a year.
twice a year?
In fact, some of the recommendations that we have been pursuing in terms of purchasing of equipment and so forth are direct results of those advisory meetings. So the mini mill that we purchased for industrial design and fabrication was a direct result of the recommendation that came out of an advisory group. Last year, we had purchases in the automotive diesel area that were directly related to advisory recommendations.
And that came out of a formal meeting or just a one-on-one?
My understanding is it came out of a formal meeting.
So is there, I mean, say if Nick was interested in, I don't know, maybe culinary.
Yep.
So if he was interested in it, how would he, A, go about finding out when that group is meeting and B, getting on it? If he wanted to come visit them when they had their meeting.
You can't. A number of us were on those advisory committees.
That's right.
Before we
They
came
were-
policy
yeah.
governance. And then we realized that there's a conflict of interest.
But if you wanted to sit and just listen to what they talk about,
Well,
he
it's
could do
public
that.
meeting, Yeah.
But how would
Is that
somebody,
You can't,
I
we
remember
made
this
it.
conversation with Bill
We
Scott.
decided,
Yeah, we
it was a
decided
definite
that-
conflict of interest at the
It
time.
might,
It's a policy governance
It's a policy
separation,
governance.
really. You're talking about whether you're functioning in the capacity of management and oversight of policies and procedures, and whether you're getting down into the operation side. And that's a crossover into the operation side, which was deemed to be not appropriate given the defined roles between the board and policy and direction, and the operations, which is the realm of the practitioners and the
You were an
superintendent.
influencer.
But if someone is interested in attending, please let me know, and I can put you in contact with the instructor, or just invite you to attend the meeting to be a fly on the wall. I don't think that there's any reason that someone couldn't be present for a meeting if they're interested.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well, folks, sorry, we are way behind. Kelly?
Dana covered a lot in his. So if anyone has any questions on what I have written in mine, I'd be glad to answer them. Look at his face, it's so red.
He's very thorough.
Oh, absolutely.
How do kids, do students get picked to go to the Vermont Skills USA competitions?
Well, that is a really good question. I think it varies by program.
Okay.
And some of the instructors have an assessment that they use. And that assessment could very well be a light version of what they would do with the skills competition. So they would choose them from that standpoint.
Okay.
And sometimes, Kelly, there are more students that are interested than can compete. And so that's why you have to have some form of deciding. Sometimes there are only the right number, and then there isn't necessarily a selection process, is that correct?
That's correct.
But I heard we had very good representation this year, and we had a lot of interest, and not everybody could be accommodated, which is, I guess it's a good thing. It's unfortunate that not everybody can compete, but it's good that we have that interest. And what I did hear from a couple of groups is that they were working together on preparation. So even those students who did not get selected to participate were benefiting from the collaborative work that was leading up to it.
They could go as a spectator. or
Yes, I think they can.
As part of their group.
That's right.
To be able to see what's going on.
And I happen to know that Kelly left one thing off of her report,
All right. What was that?
that you did have a FFA student that was selected to attend the Washington Leadership Conference.
Did? Yep.
So I'll let you, another cat out of the bag, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
So we sent 2 students to the interview for the Washington Leadership Conference, which is 7 separate weeks during the summer down in Washington DC, and the National FFA Foundation puts this on, and they hire many times former National FFA officers to lead these. So the folks that are leading this conference are highly trained, very intense individuals that help guide students who are FFA members and help them learn some really key leadership skills, and then they bring it back to their chapter. So we had one with a $475 scholarship, which will cover half of her tuition to go, Suzanne will be chaperoning the group, and it looks like we may even be sending 4 or 5 total students from our chapter alone to this fantastic opportunity. And what's really interesting is we don't always have that much interest, so we don't always send students. But this year, we just have a blossoming group of interested individuals. And I went years ago, and it was just an incredible opportunity for those 2 individuals. One of them's on my advisory board now, so it's a life-changing event for some students. So thank you, Suzanne.
Can we know who it is?
What's that?
Can we know who it is?
I think so. Riley Mae Mason. She's a mining student in sustainable agriculture.
They were all thoroughly interrogated by 4 foundation board members.
And it's Riley, R-Y-L-E-E, M-A-E, all one word, Mason. Got it?
You did that for Sean, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
No, it isn't.
I thought that.
I have double check. Any other questions for Kelly?
Just a quick one. You mentioned the map testing.
Yes.
So does every single Hannaford student do the AccuPlacer test? No.
No, we chose to do the map test instead of the AccuPlacer here a couple of years ago. The AccuPlacer gives good data in terms of where students are at, but it doesn't offer any prescription type information in terms of what students will actually need and how to get them there. So that's why we changed a few years ago. But some students will be AccuPlaced, if they happen to be in CCD classes or BTC classes. But all of our students will be map tested. Or are map tested, I should say. Because the window closes on Friday, we'll be done.
Any other questions or wondering? All right, so Len.
I'll try and be quick. I had a couple of dates that I was not attentive to. I guess our fundamentals of natural gas class finished last week, and 11 former Marshall dismissed that class, and 100% of them passed their exam. I did not intend to schedule our Millbury Natural Foods Club cooking with roast lamb or roast pork and our welding as an appetizer on the same night. I'll go down after the meeting and make sure that didn't run afoul. And we did receive final grant documents for the $18,000 education and training fund, mostly to support our phlebotomy program startup. It's a tough time of year for adult ed to start a new class because the LESAC 9-degree grant ran out of money in February, and there's not funding available for those who need it. So this grant has allowed us to reduce the tuition for the phlebotomy program from $1,700 down to $1,200, and then also to offer stipends to participants for their clinical experience, so that they can roll on in and answer any questions. Yes, sir.
Question on Vermont Youth. So, out of these students that are taking this, how many have taken this before, have been enrolled before? I think we have one in the current cohort that has, that did the summer program before. They're slightly different designs, but similar in a lot of ways. Are they still getting paid an hourly wage to attend
They
this?
are. One on the phlebotomy, did I hear correctly from Denise that that's already full and we have a waiting list?
It is, I think we had one drop out because of not being good clinical funding for it and replaced her from the waiting list. So we might not have a waiting list
Anymore.
for classes for it.
But it was very popular.
Yeah.
That's good. Any questions for Lynn? Sorry, folks, we are 10 minutes behind schedule, at least. Policy 4.1, governing style. Anybody want to take a stab at it?
Sure. Well, we read it over,
Yeah.
but we were all a little punchy tonight, but all in good humor and lots of good information out there, and overall, it was fun.
And I apologize, my absent-mindedness, having surgery on Monday, which was a little more involved than anticipated. Just in the process of getting back on my feet. No, you cannot give my crutches to John Curler next time. Is there anything else before we look for a motion to adjourn? Hearing none, motion to adjourn, please.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, which we don't have to do, but. Aye. All right, we'll see you all again.